Hello everyone, this is Mr. Nevertill here. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at level 11, the screwdriver handle. Once you have completed this model, you have a choice of moving on to level 9, or you can take this file and export it as an STL and bring it over to one of the 3D printers and actually 3D print it out. There are bits available in the lab that will actually fit inside the slot we're going to create, and you can choose between a flathead or a Phillips screwdriver handle. Again, that's optional. The 3D printing aspect of this is something that you can experiment with, or you can just move on to level 12. Now you notice I have a hole for the bit up here, and I also have my initials that are going to be down on the bottom. So let's get into it. As always, we are going to go to our dashboard in Onshape, and our first step is going to hit Create and then Document. And for this, we are going to call it the screwdriver handle. We're going to hit Create and wait a second as that loads. Now, the first step is actually a sketch that's going to encompass kind of like half of the screwdriver. So we're going to do a rectangle that's at 3 inches and 0.375. So let's go ahead and hit our sketch button. We're going to click on the front plane as we normally do. We're going to change our view over here on the view cube to the front view. And we're going to come up and hit the rectangle tool. And as we draw, we normally start on the origin and we'll come up. At this point, we need to dimension, and we're going to hit the dimension tool. I'm going to click on the side here first, click once and click again, and we're going to change this to 3. And then for our width, we're going to go with 0.375. So I'll hit dimension, I'll click on the top, I'll come up, and we'll hit 0.375. Now what we're trying to do actually is create half of the screwdriver handle, as we're going to use a tool called Revolve to bring this around for us. So we're actually done sketching at the moment, and we're going to do it like we normally do. We're going to hit the green check mark. We can change our view back to the isometric or 3D view here by clicking on the corner of our cube. And now we're going to use the Revolve tool. It's right next to the Extrude tool. We're going to click on that first. Now what it's going to do is ask us what do we want to revolve first, and we would like to revolve this rectangle, so I'm going to click here. Now it's going to ask us, well, where do we want to revolve around? And if we click on this option and we tell the program I'd like to revolve around this axis, it will automatically kind of create a cylinder. We've taken the rectangle and we've revolved it around that inner axis. And we are in fact going to do a full revolve, and we'll hit the check mark. So at this point we need to create the slot on the top, which is going to have the bit actually fit inside. So I'm going to go ahead and hit sketch here. I'm going to click on the top of our screwdriver handle. And now that we're drawing on the top, I'm going to go ahead and hit the top view on the view cube. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now the dimensions for this are a little convoluted, so we're going to go through this pretty carefully. I'm going to double click here and take a look. If we don't get the dimensions perfectly correct, then the bit in the lab actually won't fit inside of it. So we're going to go ahead and start with the circle tool. I'm going to come down and click on the origin, and I'm going to come out. At this point, we need to dimension the circle. So I'm going to go ahead and hit dimension, click on the circle itself, and come out. The dimension for the actual circle is going to be 0.145, and this is an important dimension as it's going to fit the bit that we need. So I'm going to go ahead and hit 0.415. So once we have the diameter for the bit at 0.145, we do have to compensate for the wing tips actually that are part of the bits. We are going to try and glue the bit all the way inside here, so we have to make sure it actually fits. Now to do that, we're going to use the rectangle tool up on the top here. Now typically when we use the rectangle tool, we select one edge and we go to another. In this sense, we're going to try and actually use it in a different way. So if you come up and you hit the arrow next to the rectangle tool, you can come down where it says center point rectangle. So we're going to be drawing our rectangle not from corner to corner, but actually from the center. So I'm going to click on the origin here. And I'm just going to come out and click once more. Now obviously we're going to have to dimension this so it's perfect for that bit to fit. So to do that, we're going to hit the dimension tool. And we can go from the origin here. I'm going to click once, and I'm going to click another time on the edge of the rectangle and come over. Now this dimension, if we go back to our example here and we take a look, is 0.025. So we are going to hit 0.025, and there you go. Now because we drew this from the center, we actually don't have to dimension the bottom portion of this, but we are still worried about the distance between the origin and the side. So if I click on the center of the circle here, the origin, and I click on the edge of the rectangle and come up, this dimension is going to be 0.1. So we have the profile or the shape of the actual bit that we're going to be putting in. We could extrude all of these different pieces, or we could take a second and just kind of trim out the pieces we don't need. So to do that, we're going to use the trim tool. If you go up to the top toolbar and you find the little pair of scissors here, this is our trim tool. And essentially what that does is it removes items, lines, arcs that are intersecting between others. So for instance, this is a line that we don't actually need, so we can click there. This is an arc that we don't need, so we can click there. Same with the bottom line, I'm going to click here. And finally, the right arc. So now we have the perfect profile for the bit to actually fit, and we can come up and we can hit the green check mark, which will end our sketch. We can hit the 3D view on our view cube and zoom in just a little bit. Now we'd like to extrude this. Obviously we're going to be removing it so the bit can fit inside. So we're going to hit our extrude tool. We can click right on the profile of what we created, and we are not adding material, we are going to in fact remove it. Now the depth in which the bit is going to fit inside the screwdriver handle is actually set at 1 inch, and that was going to be perfect for our purposes. So we can keep it right at 1 inch and go ahead and hit the green check mark. So when we do, if we do 3D print this, the bit will have kind of a nice snug place where we can glue it inside. Now, at this point, we kind of want to make this look a little bit more like a actual handle, and to do that, we can round over these edges here. So I'm going to go and hit the fillet tool up on our toolbar here. And I can select both of them actually at the same time. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to click on this edge, and I'm going to come down and I'm actually going to click on this edge. Please be mindful that you're not clicking on the actual face, you're not clicking on the bottom, you're clicking on the edge. That's going to make a big difference for us. And at this point, we can actually keep it at 0.1 inches. You can change the radius in which you'd like to make your screwdriver handle. Just be mindful, we're going to be attempting to put our initials on the bottom, and it's going to be a lot easier if we keep it at 0.1. So I can hit the green check mark. It is starting to look a little bit more like a handle. The only thing that we're missing is our own little personal touch, especially if you plan on 3D printing this. It might be difficult to distinguish between others, so we're going to go ahead and add our initials on the bottom. To add your initials, we need to start a sketch and kind of write in the letters that we're going to extrude remove. So to do that, we're going to come up and we're going to hit the sketch tool. And please be careful and mindful that you do have to click right on the bottom of your screwdriver handle. So I'll click there. And to make this easier, we're also going to click on the bottom of the view cube so we can see this a little better. So All we're essentially doing is just adding in text and extrude removing it. So we're going to come up and find the text tool right here. Zoom in a little bit, and what you're going to do with the text tool is kind of tell the program where you'd like the text to be. So all you need to do is kind of click and drag in that space. Now it's going to ask us what text we want, and again, we're doing our initials, so I'll type in KN and hit the green check mark. Now your text might come in just a little bit too big to actually fit, and it's pretty easy to actually change the size. So for our case, we're going to hit the dimension tool. I'm going to click on the top of the text. I'm going to click on the bottom of the text. I'm going to bring it over. Now this is set to almost 0.27, so let's go ahead and try like 0.2, and I'll hit enter. And that looks like it's going to fit a little bit better. Now we're still in the dimension tool, so to get out of it, hit the escape button on your keyboard, and you're able to now move the text around. We're not going to try and dimension it perfectly in the program. We're just going to try and get it as close to the center kind of as possible. So once you've done that and we're ready to go, we can go ahead and hit the green check mark. We're going to engrave this, or in other words, extrude remove into the screwdriver handle. So we'll hit the extrude tool in the top left. We're going to click on the text that we just created. Now again, we're not adding material here, we're going to remove it. And just as we've done in previous projects, we're going to change that depth to 0.05 and go ahead and hit the green check mark. And that should add your own little personal touch to the screwdriver handle. And if you do end up 3D printing it, you'll know whose is whose. Now, if you are going to plan on 3D printing the screwdriver in the lab, you need to make sure that you have the brim setting on. Otherwise, as it's 3D printing, so if we look at it from the front view, it's going to 3D print upright like this. If it gets to a point where it's trying to print pretty high here, there's a possibility that the screwdriver handle will completely fall off the 3D print bed. So these take about 45 minutes all the way to the top, and it's possible that after a half hour it will fall. So we need a brim setting on the 3D printer. So to do that, just as an example, again, to 3D print one of your models, we come down to where it says Part Studio 1. We're going to right click and hit export, and all of these settings show up. We're going to call this our first and last name, and we'll add in a screwdriver handle. And please make sure that it does say STL here underneath all the formats. And as always, we are going to make sure that this says millimeter. We'll hit export, and that file will pop up here. Whether you're using your Chromebook or one of the laptops in the lab, this file is what you're going to upload to the Google Classroom assignment. So we can just kind of click this, and I'll give you a quick example of what it looks like to 3D print on the MakerStation. So for us, when we zoom in here, we'll see it is going to print upright, which is what we want. But as I said before, if it's 3D printing all the way to the top here, there's a chance it's going to fall over. So to alleviate that, when you are setting your settings for the 3D print, as usual, we're going to set it to 2.2 millimeters at speed. PLA or ABS, whatever printer you're trying to print on. We don't need any supports for this particular model, but the infill can be set to 20. This is the box that you're looking for right here. It says brim. You do need to make sure that you click that before you hit slice. And all that's going to do is print this little support system on the bottom here. And as the 3D print goes up, it's going to have a little bit more force applied to it on the bottom so it doesn't tip over, and it's going to alleviate a lot of problems. So make sure that you have the brim set and when you send it to the 3D printer. And that's how to create the 3D printed screwdriver handle.